Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Alissa. Today, I will be interviewing Jared Pander. He's a Senior VP and Division Manager at Dollar Bank. And Jared leads the Pittsburgh Private Banking Department and he's been in the industry since 2004. So, Jared, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you, Alissa, for having me.
Well, let's talk interest rates, which I think everybody is curious about. So where are rates sitting currently? And by currently, just to our audience, if you watch in the future, we are at the beginning of August in 2025.
When we talk about interest rates, I think we have to talk about inflation, the labor market, and the Federal Reserve. There has been progress made on inflation. Inflation has declined significantly since its peak in 2022, although it still does remain somewhat elevated at 2.8%, which is measured by the Fed's preferred inflation index, if you will, which is the core PCE index. It is slightly elevated over the 2% long-run objective for the Fed, so you could say that it's caused rates to stay elevated to some extent. Unemployment rate, that does remain low, although it was recently adjusted in June and July, I believe, or maybe May, June, and July, to reflect the higher rate. And that's probably going to result or be a primary driving factor in a rate reduction coming up in September. There were sort of mixed reviews coming from the Fed in their last meeting about whether or not a rate reduction was going to happen, how many were going to happen in 2025. But our economic experts at the bank feel strongly that there will be a reduction of 25 basis points in the Fed funds rate at their meeting in September, and most likely another cut November or December in 2025. So we should see rates come down slightly over the last half of this calendar year. From a banking standpoint, most folks associate mortgage rates with interest rates, right? Folks watch mortgage rates, especially those that are thinking about buying or selling a house. Our 30-year fixed rate is hovering around 6.5%. That's down slightly from its peak, around 7%. And our 15-year fixed rate mortgage is hovering around 5.75%, which is down, from its peak around 6.5%.
So with the big, beautiful bill passing recently, we're going to experience another increase in the debt ceiling. How does that increasing the debt ceiling, how does that affect rates in the short term and in the long term?
Yeah, so in the short term, there will need to be an increase in the supply of government bonds. And then also there's been an increase to some extent in the credit rating of those government bonds, or I should say a decrease in the credit rating because of increased perceived credit risk, which is unprecedented. That's never happened before. And that, I think, revolves around uncertainty that exists. Both of those factors can lead to higher interest rates in the short term. In the long term, rates will be affected primarily by the returns on those borrowed funds and how those borrowed funds are used. If those borrowed funds are invested in ways that increase economic growth, like infrastructure or technology, those investments may help offset the debt cost and rates may stabilize or even decline. However, if the debt keeps rising faster than economic growth, that may lead to higher long-term rates as investors request more return for the added credit risk.
And if the rates do rise, how does that typically affect borrowers?
Well, consumers will have to pay more for mortgage loans, car loans, credit card debt. Businesses will face higher costs to finance growth or operations, which can slow expansion, which can slow hiring, which can slow spending, which would, ultimately have the desired effect of bringing rates back down. Higher rates can, have an effect on wages. Lower wages can result from less available capital, and productivity in the labor market may also decrease leading to potentially lower real wages. So certainly a more negative than positive effect on the economy, which is what they're designed to do, to slow the economy down and bring prices back down to where they were previously.
And alternatively, if we do see a decrease, whether, slight or greater than slight, right, greater than maybe 50 basis points, how does that typically affect borrowers?
Well, it would be good news primarily for borrowers. The business community would perceive that as good news as well. So maybe an uptick in the equities markets in terms of valuations. New loans would be less expensive. Existing borrowers could refinance higher rates to reduce their monthly payment, thereby increasing cash flow, which may increase spending for them. Job and wage growth would be expected. Businesses would be able to invest more, use more working capital potentially, buy more equipment. Cash flow could increase, and that would all tend to lead to growth in business activity and higher productivity with lower interest rates. That would stimulate economic growth and hopefully help us to reduce the deficit. So certainly a positive impact from lower rate environment, which is what I think we're all hoping for here, or to see signs of that in the next couple Fed meetings.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you again for joining me, and thank you to the audience for watching. I will see you next month on another episode of Coffee with Alissa.
Great. Thank you for having me.